So this week's parsha is Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah. And we have the pasuk says, Vatamas Sarah, and Sarah passed away. B'Kiryas Arba. Kiryas Arba. That's the right spelling of Arba, right? Yeah. Hi Chevron. Dot, dot, dot. Dot, dot, dot. Okay, so says Vatamas Sarah, and Sarah passed away B'Kiryas Arba, in Kiryas Arba, Hi Chevron, which is Chevron. Vayavai Avraham, dot dot dot. We're skipping a few words. Vayavai Avraham, and Avraham came Lispod LeSarah, to eulogize Sarah V'Lifkosa, and to cry for her, grieving obviously for the passing of his wife. The Baal Shem Tov. No, sorry. This is from the Zohar. So the Zohar interprets this pasuk and says, Vatamas Sarah. So first of all, Avram and Sarah are a couple, right? A couple is a composite entity of two people who come together to become one entity, right? A couple. A couple is an entity that is comprised of two individuals who have come together into this to form a couple. Avram and Sarah are a metaphor for the composite entity that is each of us. Every single one of us is a composite entity of two individual entities that have come together to form a composite union, and that would be between our body and our soul. We have a physical component and a non-physical component. The physical component is the body. The non-physical component is the soul. They're two separate entities, but a person is, by definition, a body and a soul that are together as one. And so, this is talking metaphorically also, in addition to the literal meaning. It says, Vatamas Sarah, and Sarah passed away, B'Kiryas Arba, Sarah, who was comprised of four, I'm not sure what the right word is. In Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew, you would say Yesodos, foundations. Sometimes people translate them as elements. Elements probably is actually a good word inherently. The reason I don't like to use the word elements is because of the baggage and the misconception that it can bring along, because in conversation about physical reality, we talk about the elements, right? We have the periodic table of the elements, hydrogen, helium, etc., the elements that the world is made up of. When we use the word elements for these four foundations, which are Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar, fire, air, earth, and water, when they get conflated, it can make it seem like it's some, like primitive misunderstanding of reality, and we thought those were the elements and now we know these are the elements, when it's really talking about two different things. To talk about these as being elements, perhaps maybe elemental characteristics might be a better way of putting it. There are four elemental characteristics perhaps. There is the fire characteristic, the air characteristic, the water characteristic or water-like characteristic, and the earth-like characteristic, perhaps. But we have these four elemental characteristics, let's say, or elements. He chevron, chibur means a bond. They had been combined, these four elements, these four physical elemental characteristics that were the characteristics of Sarah's body, and these 4 elemental characteristics combined in making Sarah's body be what it was. And once she passed away and her body, she was deceased and her body disintegrated, these 4 characteristics, elemental characteristics, which had been combined and come together in forming her body, now dispersed. Vayavai Avraham, and Avraham, the soul, came, lispod l'Sarah, to mourn for the body. Right, we said that we're body and soul, and in that partnership, Sarah represents, I think we may not have addressed this specific detail before, but Sarah, in the way the Zohar talks about it, is a metaphor for and a representation of the body, and Avraham represents the soul. Avraham and Sarah couple the 2 of them together. So now that the body, Sarah's body passed away, or when the body in general passes away, then Vayavai Avraham, the soul, comes, lispod l'Sarah v'livkosa, to mourn and grieve for the loss of the body. When this body, made up of these 4 physical elemental characteristics, then decomposes, Chevron, these 4 elemental characteristics which had been combined together in this body, when that body disintegrates, the soul mourns the loss of the body. Okay?
Rabbi,
yes?
it only says like about the Sarah that she consisted of these 4 elements.
No. That's everyone and everything. We're just seeing how the words of this pasuk, of this verse, are alluding to this idea that when someone passes away and the body decomposes, the soul mourns the loss of the body. This is a general thing that's true for anyone. We could run into an issue here when we say that Avraham, if Avraham and Sarah being a couple, a composite entity made up of 2 separate individuals, Avraham being the soul and Sarah being the body, Avraham representing the soul and Sarah representing the body, if that's the way it is, we can run into an issue here, because we had earlier, when Sarah gave Avraham an instruction, told him to do something, he didn't like what she said, he didn't want to listen. What did Hashem tell Avraham? Kol asher tomer lecha Sarah shma b'kola. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen.
That's nice.
Sounds like, all right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you think so. Might get fired for that one. So
You could do worse.
I probably have done worse, much worse.
Same.
Question is, do I have to clip that out? Okay, I think I can handle that heat. So it sounds like Hashem is telling the soul, whatever the body tells you, listen. That doesn't sound quite right. Right? It's like we learn and we work so much, and we know every day we have to work on being run less by the whims and desires of the body and focusing more on the soul and the well-being of the soul. And here it's like Hashem says to Avram, to the soul, whatever the body tells you, listen. I'm sure the body likes the sound of that. What's going on here? It seems like this is a complete inverse of what we understand the relationship between the body and the soul and our pursuits and aspirations on a daily basis should be. To understand this, why this actually is exactly right, we're going to look at another pasuk, another verse as interpreted by the Baal Shem Tov. So, there's a pasuk that says, Kisira chamor seinacha, Kisira, when you will see, chamor seinacha, the donkey of one who you hate, your enemy, Rovetz tachas masai, crouching, struggling under a load that it is carrying, under its load. V'chadalta me'azov imoy, and you will be inclined to not help it. Me'azov loy, I think, maybe. That might be wrong. Azov tazov imay. Bless you. You shall surely help him. Right? So this basic halacha pshat meaning is, you see someone struggling, you don't particularly like the person, you're inclined to say, ha, you deserve it, look the other way, pretend you didn't see, and keep on walking. The pasuk says, no. Be a gentle person, help out. Now, let's go back to looking at this pasuk similarly to the way we looked at this pasuk here. Kisira chamor, chumrios means materialism. When you will see materialism, soina'acha, as your enemy, when you learn a little bit about spirituality, you learn about why we're here, what's going on, what's it all about, and you start to realize that, you know what, it's not all about materialism. Life isn't just about the material experience. And I'm choosing this word very carefully, materialism, right, because there's nothing wrong with the material, and we're going to sort of get into that and break that down and talk about that a lot more, but when you will see, or let's say at this stage, Kisira chamor sonacha, when you will see the material as your enemy, your body, our bodily needs, bodily interests, the things that we just want by virtue of being a Homo sapiens animal, a human being, a person. And then we see, you know what, all of that, that's just the body, the physical, that's not what we're here for, that's trying to distract us from what we're here for. And we see the body struggling, Revetz tachas maso is struggling under its load. V'chadalta me'azov, and you will be inclined not to help it and to say, let it struggle, material is bad, we should just be here for the spiritual. Azov tazavim, no, you shall go and help the body and give it the support that it needs. So there are a few different things here that are, well, first of all, it leads us back perhaps to the same question. Well, don't we always say that it is really supposed to be more about the spiritual, and we should be focusing on the spiritual and focusing on the soul more than the body, and the needs and the interests of the soul more than the wants and the needs and the interests of the body, etc. And here it seems to be saying, no, like the body's where it's at, go give the body everything it needs, and you don't want to discard the body, you don't want to ignore the body. And the answer obviously is that it's neither one nor the other in an absolute sense, right? Which is usually the answer to most things. Everything's complex, and I often say, as a general rule, almost always, if there's a question, is it this one or that one? It's almost always both. The question is, what's the mix? And obviously that is, not quite as absolute, etc. But, so we have here, when you will see the material as your enemy and want to let it struggle and say, yes, the body should, we don't have to worry about what the body wants. No, we should take care of the body, right? So this is starting to give us the same sort of message as Kol asher tomeh lecha Sarah shma b'kola. Whatever Sarah, whatever the body tells you, Hashem says to Avram, to the soul, when your body says something, listen. Azov ta'azov imay, Hashem tells the soul. Listen to the body, help the body, support the body. What about, what we always talk about that seems to be pushing in the opposite direction of focusing more on the soul and the spiritual, etc. And really what the answer boils down to is, what it comes back to is the fact that they're a couple. The fact that a person is a combination of body and soul. And we're going to see it here in the fact that it's referred to as masa'oi. Its load. When you see the body as your enemy and you see the body struggling under its load. It doesn't say under a load. Under its load, under the load that is associated with it, attributed to it. The load here that we're talking about is Torah, mitzvahs. The body is struggling. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of change. It's a lot of growth. It's a lot that it needs to really work at against its nature, and it's struggling. Why is Torah and mitzvahs the load of the body? Torah and mitzvahs really is more associated with the soul than it is with the body. right? The body is just the vehicle that we use to learn the Torah and do the mitzvahs. But Torah and mitzvahs are more, when we talk about taking into account or thinking more along the lines of the soul than the body, generally what we mean is, yes, focus on Torah and mitzvahs, because Torah and mitzvahs are the domain of the soul rather than, the material things that are the domain of the body. And there is truth to that. That being said, if Torah and mitzvahs were the domain of the soul, and food and fun and physical pleasure, etc., were the domain of the body, and that's the way it was supposed to be, then Hashem could have just created the soul, and that would be the end of it, if that's what it was about. Create a soul learns Torah, soul will do mitzvahs. Well, we can't do mitzvahs without the body. Okay, maybe we could figure out another solution. But really, that's where the point lies. There is no other solution. The whole point is, the soul is divine by nature. The soul doesn't need Torah and mitzvahs for itself inherently that much, because the soul is spiritual in nature. The soul is divine by nature. The point of this is, the whole point of this whole exercise, and this exercise being creation of the universe and creating people, etc., all of it, everything, the point of it is to integrate divinity into the material, to integrate godliness into the physical, into the tangible. The point of Torah and mitzvahs is not for the soul. The point of Torah and mitzvahs is for the body. When someone's body does a mitzvah, when we use our hands, our feet, our mouth, whatever it is to do a mitzvah, to say something nice, to do a favor, to lift someone up, to learn words of Torah, to put on tefillin, to light a Shabbos candle, to give tzedakah, whatever it is, when we do that, we are elevating our body. We are integrating divinity into our body. And even the mitzvahs that are less of a physical act on behalf of the body, right? Let's say when it comes to Torah study, right? Torah study, we're learning, it's primarily an academic pursuit, but halachically, to fulfill the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, of Torah study, one has to say the words with one's mouth. You're allowed to think words of Torah before you say the blessings of the Torah in the morning. You're not allowed to say them. Because when you say the words, that's the mitzvah of learning Torah. Is there value in learning Torah just by reading and not saying? Absolutely, tremendous value. But it's not the mitzvah of learning Torah. The mitzvah of learning Torah requires that we say the words with our mouth. Why? So when we move our mouth, that's an action. And the point of mitzvahs is action integrated into the world, into physical reality. That being said, what about the mitzvah of Avas Hashem, loving Hashem?
You need to feel it with your body.
Bingo. Exactly. There's no physical action that could be associated with that. But that being said, when a person feels true, real, the real human emotion of love for someone, that is associated with very real, physical, tangible changes in the person's body. They're not necessarily changes that are observable to the naked eye. Some of them will be, right? You'll see, let's say when someone has someone who's very dear to them, they haven't seen them in a while, and that person's in town. Very likely, even if you don't know that this happened, you might see something different about the person. You'll see they have a different spring in their step, they have a different posture, they look happier, there are changes in their body. You can measure changes of hormones and neurotransmitters in their blood. There are real physical things that happen in a person's body when they feel real love. When a person feels fear, you can measure changes of adrenaline, for example, when, if a person feels afraid of something, just for one, maybe the most obvious example that comes to mind immediately. There are real things that happen in a person's body, and there are real measurable changes in the physiology and things in the blood, and there are real changes in the person's sensations and experience. When it says, V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, and you shall love Hashem your God, it doesn't mean, and you shall say that you love Hashem. And you shall check off on a list, yes, I love Hashem. It means, and you shall feel the emotion of love for Hashem. If one actually feels a real human emotion of love towards Hashem, that's going to come along with physical things. That's going to come along with a very human sensation that they're going to feel. It's going to translate to changes, measurable changes in their body. It's a real physical event. Right? Love isn't all emotions. We can think of emotions because generally we talk of emotions as being experiential, right? It's about the experience, about what we feel. And ultimately, as far as what matters most at the end of the day, that's what they're about and that's why they matter. That being said, that's not the sum total of what they are. They are feelings, they are experiential phenomena. That experience, right? Let's say, for example, a person goes for a run, right? And pushes themselves really hard and afterwards they feel really hot. Why? Because their body temperature is higher. So that feeling of feeling hot that they have is because their body temperature went up. It's a physical phenomenon. They don't feel, oh, my body temperature went up. They feel, oh my goodness, it feels so hot. It's the same thing, ultimately. A person feels positive emotion, feels negative emotion. Right? When it comes to, let's say, feeling hot, the most important thing is not, oh my goodness, I feel so hot. The most important thing is this person's body temperature is up. Is it safe? Do they need to do something to bring their body temperature down? Right? Or let's say when someone has fever, the most important part of fever is the body temperature, not the feeling. Here maybe it's the reverse, that the thing that we care about is the person's experience, how they feel, positive emotion, negative emotion, love, hate, fear, etc. But that doesn't make it any less of a physical phenomenon. These are physical phenomena. These are biochemical things that happen in a person's body, in a person's brain, in a person's blood, throughout a person's nervous system, throughout the body. These are real things. If the love that a person feels for Hashem is a real, actual human emotion towards Hashem, it's going to be as real as a person's real human emotion towards another person. Which is, and what we mean generally when we say love, we're talking about the experiential component of it. But you can't separate that from the physical event, the physiological event that's associated with it. You could talk about one part, you could talk about the other part, but you can't separate them. They go together. You have one, you have the other. And so, yes, the mitzvah, to fulfill the mitzvah of loving Hashem, the love has to be an actual love that we feel, that comes with physical components. And if the love that we feel for Hashem doesn't have those physical components that are the physical components of any other love, then it's not really loving Hashem properly, and then we haven't fulfilled the mitzvah properly. So every mitzvah that we do, right, does the soul love Hashem? Yes, the soul loves Hashem. The soul is ultimately a part of Hashem. It doesn't need to be commanded to love Hashem. So if the Hashem wants us to love Him and it says, you shall love Hashem, and the soul loves Hashem anyway, create a soul, the soul loves Hashem, everybody's happy. You have to create a body that's more interested in ice cream than it is in Hashem, and then put a soul in it, and then they're fighting with each other and they're confusing each other, and each one doesn't really get the other one, and there's this just never-ending confusion and just mess. And then Hashem says, oh, now that the soul, which naturally loves me, is inside of a body, now I can actually tell you that you have to work on loving Hashem. What's the point of that? Like, it's making things, it's creating what seems to be an unnecessary, complicated mess for no reason, when the solution was already in place before you went and made it into a mess. The soul already loved Hashem. And the answer is in this word, masa'oi. This is the load of the body. Chamor. When you see the body, the material, it's struggling with this load. Yes, this load is the load of the body. There is zero achievement when the soul loves Hashem. What did it achieve? Nothing. That's its natural state of being. What value does that generate? None. It didn't generate anything. It just is. It doesn't help anyone. Whoop-de-doo, the soul loves Hashem because the soul is Hashem and the soul sees things that way. Okay, and? The whole point of this whole exercise of the creation of space and of time and of matter and energy and the universe within space and time, all of that, the point of that is that physical matter is physical, spirituality, the non-physical is spiritual, it's non-physical. The whole point of this exercise is let's bring them together and create this complex physico-spiritual reality where not only are they partnered together, but the spirituality is actually integrated into the physical, and the physical starts to develop an appreciation for the spiritual and to take on characteristics of the spiritual and to be elevated. It's not just about having two things, body and soul, physical and spiritual, that are just working together as a team. Right? This idea could be true in, let's say, for example, a married couple. It could be true for a sports team, for any sort of collaboration or teamwork. The most profound of soulmates, when they just met and were just spending time together for the first time, they were just two people who were getting to know each other. In terms of their experience. Maybe they were predetermined designated soulmates, that might be. But in terms of what that experience looks and feels like, it's two people who are talking to each other, getting to know each other. When people get together on a team, you could have, right, maybe a band actually might be, a musical band might be a really good example to illustrate this, right? A really, really highly experienced and professional musician can show up to a performance with a band to play with a bunch of people they've never met before. But if they're really good, and if you have a band of people who are experienced and professional and true experts at their craft, you sit them down together, you put the sheet music in front of them, you set the metronome, whatever it is, you get, you set up a system by which they're all coordinated, and they can play hypothetically perfectly together. And it might, someone who's observing this is going to assume, obviously, these people have practiced together. It's like, perfect. Well, no, they just really know what they're doing, and they all sat down. And the sheet music is very clear, and it gives specific instructions exactly what to do, and they're doing it, and this is the product. But if you have people who've been practicing and playing and jamming together for years, and they know each other's musical personality, and they really relate and connect at a deeper level, there's going to be a magic when they play together, assuming they're good. There's going to be a magic when they play together that those professional musicians who are reading the sheet music together will never achieve. Because they're in this, it's not just people who are doing something together. They are a composite team, and they have an appreciation. Each one has an appreciation for, there's a few different things that are happening here. Number one, each one, will sort of have an appreciation for the other one's taste and where they're going to go and what they're going to do, and they can anticipate and work together, and they can freestyle together, and it'll just be completely magical. They're also going to understand the other one's weaknesses, and they'll know, okay, I see this going somewhere, that person's going to maybe not, this is not going to be their best, I'm going to step in and support them, right? So they understand each other, they understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, they care about each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they have this mutual appreciation and connection that's not just academic. It's a connection that will allow them to really make magic together as a composite entity, right? And the body and the soul, it's the same thing. It's not just body doing body job, soul doing soul job. The body and the soul come together, and each one becomes, right, and maybe this is the point. When you have a bunch of professionals who all show up on time, they're professional, they're there, everyone's there early enough to preview the music, they all get down, sit down, they read the music, they play the music, it's perfect. And then you compare that with, these people who've been playing together and have this relationship and mutual appreciation, etc. When the professionals are playing together, one second, I just completely lost my train of thought. Yeah, okay. When these professionals are playing together, each one is doing their thing. Right? If you have this situation and you could have like a dozen or 20 or 30 of them, hypothetically, you could hypothetically have a whole symphony orchestra. If everyone is experienced and professional enough, they can all just show up and play, and they'll watch the conductor and they'll look at their sheet music and they'll play and it will be perfect. But what's each one of them doing? Each musician is sitting there and is saying, conductor's doing this, sheet music says this, I do this. They're not thinking about the music as a whole. They're not thinking about what the other musicians are playing and where they think they're going to go and what's going, because that's not their job. Their job is to play the music as it's written on the sheet in front of them, and that's what they do. Each one is doing their thing, and when a bunch of musicians each do their thing properly, effectively, competently, professionally, you can have a beautiful product. Right? And the body and the soul could come together, and the body does its thing and the soul does its thing, and then there is a product. That could happen. But that's not what it's supposed to be. What it's supposed to be is when you have the musicians who are a team and they've been playing together for years and they're in it together and they see themselves as a group, as a team, as a collective. And each one of them sees themselves as part of this greater musical organism. They're not just playing their role, they are playing their part in something bigger, and they see the whole picture, perhaps even first and foremost, before and above their own role in it. Right? They're in this together and they are looking to enhance each other and to contribute and to elevate and to lift up and to make all the other members of the team, to give them something that's going to make them more than what they would be on their own. The body and the soul coming together, the point is not just that the body should do its thing and the soul should do its thing. It's one composite entity. It's two things that are there to be one thing. They're in it for each other. They're in it for the combined entity that they become. And the point of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs isn't for the sake of the soul. The soul doesn't really need it. The point of it is for the body. And that's why it says, Revetz tachas masa'oi. You see the body struggling under the load of Torah, under the load of mitzvahs, it's having a hard time. A person who's, let's say, very spiritually oriented in a perhaps somewhat primitive and misguided way will say, okay, that's fine, my body's struggling, like who cares? It's all about the spirituality. It's like, well, no, if it was all about the spirituality and you didn't care about the body, Hashem would have just made your soul. He wouldn't have made the body. The point of the Torah and mitzvahs and of us being here is about our bodies doing the Torah, about our bodies doing the mitzvahs. That's why, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah, we have to say the words with our mouth. If we want to be fulfilling the mitzvah of loving Hashem, it has to be in a way where there's real, physical, measurable phenomena associated with that love for Hashem, because it's the body's love for Hashem, not the soul. The soul loves Hashem anyway, whoop-de-doo. The whole point of this project is for the physical. The point of this whole thing of the creation of time and space and mass and energy and all of that comes together and gives us this amazing, beautiful universe and world and reality and experience. The point of that is the integration of the infinity of divinity into the tangible, into the material, into the body, into physical things. It's masa'oi. The Torah and mitzvahs are about the body more than they are about the soul. So to think, oh, who cares about the body, just to ignore it, just discard it, is missing the whole point. And the Pasuk's telling us this isn't about the soul, this is about the body. It's masa'oi, the load of the donkey, of the chamor, the chumrius, the material. Well, then the question becomes, if it's all about the body, and the truth is, I think the question's really already been addressed, but just to clarify in case, it's a little confusing, because it can be, because this is, it's a complex picture. So if it's all about the body, why do we spend so much time learning about, thinking about, focusing on spirituality and the soul, and we talk about, trying to become more interested in the spiritual than the physical and more interested in the soul than the body? Like, that seems to be the complete opposite message over here. It's not the opposite message at all. It's maybe the opposite part of the message. let's say that someone, a student is acting out. A student in school, high school, elementary school, whatever it is, they're acting out and really not behaving appropriately and it's not working. And so this student gets a talking to by the teacher, by the principal, by their parent, by whoever it is, social worker, whatever it is. And someone's telling them, like, you have to follow the instructions of the teacher. You have to cooperate with what the teacher says. Like when you're in the classroom, your responsibility is to listen to the teacher, to follow the teacher's instructions, to listen, etc. Is all of that true? Yes, all of that's true. And those instructions, and yes, obviously that the way that I said it probably isn't going to be constructive if someone's acting out and having issues, but for simplicity's sake, that's the gist of the message, and it's correct. Now, let's take a step back and pretend we're not talking about this scenario. We're talking about the concept of a classroom with a teacher and students. What's the point of having a classroom with students and a teacher in the classroom? Is the point of the classroom and the teacher and the students that the students should listen to the teacher and cooperate and do what the teacher says and listen? No. I mean, if any teacher sees their role in a classroom that way, they should go get another job, or maybe not go get another job, but quit this job like yesterday. That's not the point. The point of classroom with students and a teacher is that the teacher should give to the students, should provide, should add to the students' knowledge, experience, understanding, perspective. The classroom's about the students, not about the teacher. If the classroom's about the students, not about the teacher, why are you telling the student you have to listen to the teacher and do what the teacher says and cooperate? It's like we just said the opposite. Well, yes and no. The purpose of the whole thing is for the student's interest, but if you want the student's interests to be met, that's only going to work if, assuming that we have a good teacher who cares and is doing their best, etc., and is somewhat competent, the way that the student is going to get what they have the ability to get from the teacher is when they cooperate and listen, etc. So it's not either or, right? And let's say more specifically, if when a teacher is being trained to be a teacher, if the training's any good, a big emphasis on that in their training is going to be setting the ground rules and the perspective. The perspective is, this is not about you, this is about your students, right? And if a teacher's missing that, forget about it. There's nothing to talk about. It's going to be a train wreck on every level, because it is about the students. But if you walk in on the first day when students are coming to school for the first time and you tell them, this is not about the teacher, it's about the students, it's all about the students, what do you think it's going to look like? It's going to be a train wreck also. Right? The teacher needs to be told, by the way, this is about the students. The students need to be told, you need to respect the teacher and cooperate and listen what the teacher says. And when each one is looking on their responsibility within the picture, we can end up with an amazing, beautiful product. We have a body and we have a soul. The point of this exercise is about the body. The Torah and mitzvahs are primarily here for the body's sake. It is the load of the body. We care about the body more than we care about the soul. And by we, I mean Hashem and the objective full truth is more interested in the body than the soul in this picture. That being said, if you want what you want for the body to actually happen, if you want that to be realized, because the nature of a child in a classroom is most of them probably are not interested in listening and would rather do what they feel like and act on a whim rather than listen to what the teacher says. If you care about the student and their well-being, you're going to train them to do this in a way that is constructive and makes sense and is going to work for their best interest. Fine print, not necessarily is the nature of every classroom in school the way they're organized today, done in a way that's in the best interest of the students. Separate conversation. But that's the point, that's the idea. It's about the student and we want the best for the students. But if we want that to happen, we have to, the students have to see things in a way that's going to lead them to behave in a way that's going to generate that outcome. And perhaps being, obedient and respectful and all of those things in the way that they're designed today may or may not be the ideal. But those foundations and values are correct. It's just maybe they should be arranged and directed a little differently, perhaps. The point of this whole project is about the body. If we wake up in the morning and say, oh, what do I feel like eating? What do I feel like doing? What's going to make me feel comfortable? What's going to give me the highest level of dopamine the most quickly? If we're just thinking about our bodies, thinking about our bodies, the result's not going to be very good for our bodies, spiritually or physically, frankly. And that's a fact. That's unavoidable. If we want to achieve the objective, which is primarily interested in our bodies, in the spiritual development of our bodies, in the integration of divinity into our bodies, in our bodies becoming something more than they are just as a physical entity, and our bodies being elevated and uplifted, etc. The way to do that is to get our brains, our minds, our consciousness, and our bodies more interested in the spiritual, in the divine. It's not about becoming less interested in physical or the material. Material maybe is a better word to play with here. It's going to work a little more easily, perhaps. There is nothing wrong with the material, and there is no reason, there is no value in seeing the material as negative. There is something wrong with being materialistically oriented. It's not material that's negative, it's materialism that's negative. We should not be trying to disengage from the material, but we should be trying to disengage from or to overcome the tendency to be materialistic. Right? Two very different things. There's nothing positive about denying our body the nutrients that it needs to be healthy. There is something positive about viewing food as a resource and a source of nutrients rather than just being a source of culinary pleasure. There is nothing wrong with getting the sleep that our bodies need to be maximally healthy and functional. It's a mitzvah to get the sleep that we need. There is something positive about, and again, we're talking levels here. This is already, talking at a relatively high level of, let's say, achievement in spiritual growth. There's a big difference between saying, okay, I need to get 7.5 hours sleep now, I'm going to go to bed so I can get enough sleep for my body to be healthy and functional, or saying, oh my goodness, that sensation of lying down and putting my head on the pillow, amazing, let me run to bed, I can't wait. Same action, two very different things. One is engaging in the physical act, one is being materialistic about it. And so the Pasuk tells us, Ki sira chamor seinacha, if you see the physical, the material as your enemy, which you should not, and therefore you're inclined, and you see it struggling under the load of Torah mitzvahs, and a person's body they're having a hard time, as a human being, that just human experience, they're really struggling and having a hard time, and then they say, well, it's all about the spiritual, I'm going to ignore the body, not listen to it, it doesn't matter, the body's trash, the body's garbage, it's all about the soul and the divine and the spirituality. The Pasuk says, Azev tazevimai. Pay attention to your body. Listen. If your body's telling you something, listen. Does that mean if your body says, I feel like ice cream, you must jump up and go and get ice cream? No, it doesn't. But it does mean you should pay attention, be self-aware, be aware of the needs of your body, be aware of the messages your body's giving you. Because at the end of the day, are we supposed to be orienting ourselves towards the spiritual? Yes. Why? Because of the soul? No, the soul doesn't need it. It's because of the body. It's to benefit the body. It's so that the body can progress and so that the physical mass that our body is made out of, this physical being, can have divinity integrated into it. That's the point of it. The Torah and mitzvahs are the load of the body. This is about the body. Does it mean if your body says, I want ice cream, you have to do it? No. But if someone's body is tired, it's feeling worn out, it's not getting what it needs, etc., to ignore that isn't noble, it's missing the whole point. Going back to the teacher and student analogy, is it important for, let's say, the student to respect the teacher and to, be cooperative and all of those things? Yes. Is it therefore likely to be, and why is that important? It's important for the interests of the student and the growth and development of the student. Does that mean that if a student doesn't listen in class or a student is acting out, the teacher should start screaming at the student and berating them and coming down on them as hard as possible? How likely do you think that is to be constructive, right? 9 times out of 10 or 999 times out of 1,000, if not 1,000, there's a reason why. Sometimes the reason is they're tired or they're just in a mood, and sometimes you have to do something, sometimes you let it pass. It's complicated, it's not that simple. That being said, if the teacher says, okay, the student, it is important for the student to cooperate, etc. But why is that important? Not for me, it's important for the student. I'm here for the student. The student needs to cooperate, etc., for the interests of their development. And if that's what this is about for me, then I need to stop and ask myself, why do I think this might be happening? What could I do to set things up to be different? And yes, sometimes what's needed is stronger boundaries. Sometimes what's needed is a greater sense of responsibility and, accountability on the part of the student. Sometimes it's something else. Again, most times it's a mixture, because just about everything is a mixture. But the moment that, as long as the teacher has clarity and remembers, yes, it's important for the student to cooperate, etc., so that the student can grow and learn, then the teacher's first response is not going to be punishment, discipline, be mean, scream at the student, berate them, etc. The teacher's first response internally is going to be, okay, the student is not cooperating the way that they should in the best interest of their development. What's going on? Let me listen, try to figure out what's going on here. Same thing here. When the soul sees that the body is struggling, don't ignore that, don't discount it, because this is not about the soul, it's about the body. Does the body need to learn to appreciate the soul and direct its attention and its interest in that way? Yes, because the body is way off out in ice cream land. Its job, it is about the body, but it's not about the body eating ice cream, it's about the body developing and having divinity integrated into it through Torah and mitzvahs. That's true. And if we want that to happen, then the body has to be learned and taught to appreciate those things. So yes, we put a strong emphasis on moving the body towards the spiritual, the same way that we put emphasis on the student, directing them towards respect for the classroom and the teacher and the system and all of those things. But it's about the student, it's about the body. So when you see something's not working, you don't ignore it and say, who cares, too bad. You listen, Azov Tazov Imoy. Figure out what you can do to assist the body. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean do whatever the body wants. It does mean remember that this is ultimately about the body, so pay attention to what the body needs and try to figure that out. And so coming back to Avraham and Sarah, same thing. Hashem says to Avram, Kol asher tomer l'char Sarah shma b'kola. Whatever Sarah says, listen. Hashem says to the soul, to the neshama, whatever the body says, listen, pay attention. Don't disregard, don't discount, because this is not about you and it was never supposed to be about you. It's about the body. When you see the body, the physical, struggling, and you are inclined not to help. Why? Because you look at the physical as the chamor and you see it as soinacha, as your enemy. That's a mistake. That's like the teacher who's in front of the classroom, and every teacher could have a bad day, we're all human, but if a teacher walks into the classroom and their standard perspective and the way they see things is, oh my goodness, here we go, another day with these annoying brats, what can I do to try to get them to cooperate so they're not going to annoy me today? That's not going to work. Why is it not going to work? Because the teacher's messed up. They've got the wrong perspective. If you look at the physical as soinacha, as your enemy, then you're going to be inclined not to help when you see it struggle. But that's a mistake. That's wrong. That's because this person, while very possibly even likely well-meaning and well-intentioned, because they're like, oh, it's about the spirituality, it's about becoming spiritually oriented, right? Spiritually oriented doesn't mean not physical. It means not materialistic. If you see the physical, the body, the tangible, the material as your enemy, your foundation is incorrect, it's misinformed, and then you're going to see things the wrong way. And so the Torah says, no, Azov Tazov Imoy, work with the body, help the body, find out a way to make this work, because ultimately it's about the body, it's about the physical. That's the whole point of this.
I need your advice. What leaders, what personal characteristic you should enhance improving yourself in order to be able to distinguish the voice of animal soul and the size of your body. That sometimes you're tired, but you know that you should do a maximum, and you can understand what is your maximum. Like, you know that you have a lot of strengths, but what is your maximum, minimum? When is like you need to stop?
Honestly, the character traits you need to work on with regard to that, I'm not going to say the character traits you need to work on to solve that, and you'll see why. The character traits you need to work on with regard to that issue are probably, I think the top two probably are patience and humility. And by humility, I don't mean, oh, I'm nothing. That's not humility. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Humility means seeing things in the context of the bigger picture, which means, you know what? I'm not sure. I'm confused. I can't figure it out. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to do my best. I might get it right. I might get it wrong. I have a life ahead of me. I'm going to do my best every time, every issue I encounter, I'm going to do my best. And over time, I will learn and I will get better. And over time, being able to look back at the decisions I made and seeing which ones were better decisions and which ones were less good decisions, as that data accumulates, I'll become better and better informed and better at making better decisions. And understand that I am here to struggle with this and to try and to do my best. Right? So I think that you can't solve that, because we're not here to solve it. We're here to work within it and to do our best within it, within that issue. It's always going to be here for everybody. What if we have patience and humility, we can approach it in the most constructive and healthy way, and it can become a positive experience instead of a negative one. Instead of it becoming stressful or depressing, we can see it and experience it as something that's positive and exciting and beautiful, because it's like, this is part of my relationship with Hashem and my relationship with the purpose of existence, and I'm engaging with it. I'm going to give it my best, which is what I'm here to do, and that's what it's about. And if tomorrow I wake up, I'm like, shucks, I really should have done the other thing. Was I supposed to have known then? No. I was supposed to do the best based on what I knew, and if I did the best based on what I knew, I didn't make a mistake. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. Make sense?
Yeah.
What does it look like practically that the soul will draw vitality from the body? And I know that's like a messianic thing, but can we live that like now? Can we practically
We're not going to do it literally in the sense of what it's going to look like and be when Mashiach comes. But with having that appreciation and that understanding, I think that really the current implementation of that's possible and relevant and practical today probably is just primarily focusing on this clarity and, appreciating and loving the body and the value and its role in all of this, and focusing on appreciating that and saying, yeah, in the future, when Mashiach comes, the soul will get its vitality from the body. Why? Because ultimately it's about the body, and the body is more important than the soul. So the body's root within Hashem is higher than that of the soul. And when we have that appreciation, that will give us the clarity to keep our values aligned and to stay on track rather than go off track. I think that's probably the extent of, to which that idea can be implemented and realized today. Any more questions?